You know, nothing fascinates me more than seeing weird little modes that Nintendo puts out in some of their games that they really don't need to. One of my favorite examples of this is in both New Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario 64 DS. In both of these games, each of them have a section that is dedicated to minigames. They weren't really needed to be there, but they were a nice little addition that makes the experience all the more better. And as a kid, these were some of my go-tos when I just wanted to kill some time, like gambling with Luigi, being frustrated at this stupid minigame, trying to beat your highest score in this fun little game. Hell, even in the case for New Super Mario Bros. DS, there's an entire game mode that is dedicated to two players where you, Mario or Luigi, have to duke it out in collecting the most stars in a set battle arena. These were some of the things that I would love to see in future installments, but especially within the era of the Nintendo Switch, that's not really plausible anymore. They're probably still there, but like more often than not, they're just always kind of there and you don't really think twice about their inclusions at all. But one of the last things that I saw that was very unique to one game that Nintendo puts out lies within the realm of Splatoon. Yep, this is yet another Splatoon video, and you guys know how much those do well on this channel. I know these Splatoon videos don't always do the best with this channel since a large majority of you guys are very interested into the Mario Kart content. Trust me guys, it will happen, but I do want to delve into some of the more obscurities within some of Nintendo's games. And this is a clear example of one that Nintendo has seemingly neglected ever since its first showing back on the Wii U. So what is this mode exactly? Well, in this video, we're not only going to cover the entirety of what this mode has to offer, but I'm going to try to explain why this mode was seemingly left behind from Nintendo within the next two installments. So without any further ado, let's pay a visit back to Inkopolis Plaza and look at the Splatoon mode that you probably might have forgotten all these years later. Unless you bought the expansion pass, so this transition doesn't work out. Whatever, let's just go on with the video. The first Splatoon game on the Wii U was remarkable for a lot of reasons. One of these reasons has to do with the fact that this is Nintendo's first game delving into the third-person shooter genre, and for their first attempt at it, it was actually quite decent. At least it was successful enough for the series to gain two installments, a manga, as well as many merchandises and concerts and all that. In fact, and I just now recently learned this, NPR actually reported on how Splatoon was more welcoming to the shooter genre than most other communities out there, so hey, that's something I guess. Probably doesn't apply now, but you know, it was remarkable at the time. Alongside that, Splatoon itself is just a very fun shooter game that, even if you're not too big onto the genre itself, you might have some enjoyment playing through these games. I know I certainly did. I mean, look at my rank in the first game alone. That is quite a lot of time that I've dedicated myself putting into this game, especially since, I'm gonna be honest, the first Splatoon game didn't exactly age the best. Now granted, there's aspects about the game that did excel well, like map design, and some of the subs and specials were pretty unique. But for all the praises I can give this game towards, there's also a bunch of negatives that makes me appreciate the later installments more than I would have otherwise. Things like the game's overall feel. When I replayed Splatoon for this video, it was actually shocking to me that this game felt a lot more slower than I remembered it. Now granted, this could be because I was using the Ninja Squid, which makes you more or less seen by players, but you do have a slower speed. But I don't know, the overall feel for Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3 are vastly different in a way that I actually prefer the way these games feel compared to the first game. And as much as I would love to bash in Splatoon 3's maps being more like Tetris blocks and all that, some of the maps in Splatoon 1 didn't really age the best as well. More notoriously, stages like Salt Spray Rig. And then of course you got the specials and subs, which I wouldn't say they're bad. Well, I guess I could say some of them are just absolutely worthless, but others are just kind of broken. Not to mention the satisfaction isn't nearly as immense as later games, so there's that going on for it. And yet despite that, Splatoon 1 excels at its atmosphere and most of everything else that I actually just find things that I prefer it towards. The environment of Inkopolis Plaza was something that I was a huge fan of that I didn't really resonate the same towards with Inkopolis Square, and maybe I guess Splatsville? I don't know. Regardless, we're not focusing on the modes, Turf War, ranked battles, all that. We're here to focus on the mode that you're probably more interested towards for this video. So without delaying things any further, let's go ahead and talk about the Battle Dojo. You don't remember the Battle Dojo? I wouldn't blame you. I vaguely remember playing this mode once in my life. I wanted to show my sister Splatoon at the time, so this was a convenient mode to have. This might not be the best way to show somebody how Splatoon works because the actual game itself is more complex than what it has to go for, but I didn't know at the time. I just thought, hey, it's a fun little mode to try out, so yeah. It wasn't until much later, as in this video's making, that I slowly realized that this mode has a lot of things in common with Mario Kart of all things. God damn it, it always links back to this stupid kart racing game. Okay, here we go. So the Battle Dojo is Splatoon's two-player mode. Yes, two-player mode. In future installments, the only way you can play through Splatoon proper is not only do you guys have to own the copy of Splatoon to yourselves, but you also have to play through it via online or local play. And in my case, I don't know many people that play Splatoon with this method, especially since some of the friends that I do have are either not into Splatoon or have moved on from the game, so it's much harder for me to really connect with anyone else that does play Splatoon nowadays. Unless I actively search out for them, but that's a whole different can of worms. But this mode feels more like a convenience for you and a friend, especially if one of you guys aren't really content in buying the game. What is this whole mode about, and why did I compare it to Mario Kart just now? Well, it's a little complicated and weird to discuss. First off, this one is based on Splatoon's launch, so the map selection and the weapons you have to choose from heavily reflect that to the core. I'm talking about you don't have a lot of options with weapons, and the maps you get to play through are the maps that the game starts off with. So if you're wanting to duke it out on, say, Kelp Dome, sorry buddy, this ain't it. Although with some hacking you can't access these modes, but I don't have that, nor do I intend on doing so, especially since I never come back to Splatoon 1, so yeah. What is this whole mode about? Well, essentially, the main objective isn't to ink all the turf as one might expect. No. Instead, your main objective is to pop balloons. It is as simple as that and nothing else. Or I mean, it's not fully like that. Every few seconds, new balloons will pop into random places of the map, and it's your goal to pop all these balloons and to score the most points. If you get splatted or you splat someone else, well, they lose points, and by the end of the round, the points will be doubled. Now, if you think this might sound a little basic, oh man, you aren't ready to see the other half of it. On occasion or inside crates, you will find cans that will give you a variety of things, whether it be status effects, sub-weapons, or special weapons that may aid you towards winning. Now on the surface, you might think this is a pretty bizarre mode to talk about, especially since this isn't like Turf War, or what you might typically expect if you hear the term two-player Splatoon. But I don't know, I guess there's just some weird unique charm to it that makes it stand out more than Splatoon already does. And even though this mode doesn't tackle Turf War in any way, I can definitely see some of you guys having some enjoyment with this mode. I wouldn't know since I didn't get my sister to play through this for the footage, which explains why for the most part it's just from others. What I do love about the Battle Dojo is the way it utilizes the Wii U gamepad and the other method that you have to play through with Splatoon. Oh, by the way, this is what it looks like when Nintendo asks you to do something that's similar to the gamepad. That is a nightmare. The way the Wii U gamepad was handled with the Battle Dojo is simply genius, and it's a perfect example of the Wii U gamepad being used right. For most of the time, in Splatoon 1, you have access to the battle map on your gamepad that you will use when you want to jump over to your teammates, which is convenient, but in this two-player mode, one person holds the Wii U gamepad and the other uses a variation of a Wii controller. Whether it be a classic or a standard pro controller, it doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that you need another way to play the game. And Nintendo does have an alternative if you want to have the same function as the gamepad, but yeah, it's kind of a monster. Regardless, whichever way you want to play it, this is a pretty fun mode to play through, and even though this is a mode that I won't typically go back to over and over again, as in the same vein as Splatoon 1 in general, I will appreciate Nintendo for at least tackling into this two-player mode that, as I alluded to before, never returned to the series again. Now, why would Nintendo remove the Battle Dojo in future installments? There's only one possible explanation that I guess would make sense, but there is simply an easy workaround to it that, at that point, it just doesn't. The simple fact that the game mode operates well with the fact that it's played through the gamepad and the Wii controllers in both separate screens might cause some weird complications if this was brought over to Splatoon 2 and 3, simply because they now have to use split screen, which probably wouldn't be as ideal, but they've made it work in the past, so not sure what would be different this time. Beyond that, I simply have no reason why this mode never returned. I guess the only other thing I could think about is the fact that this might be the more least interesting modes compared to the rest. I don't know, there's not really a reason or explanation as to why this never returned. It's all up to interpretation, but regardless, I'll always appreciate this one for being a little more experimental, which kind of fits the theme itself a bit with Splatoon in general, seeing as that game was very experimental with everything Nintendo has to do for it being a third-person shooter. And to that I'd say, I commend them for it. I'm not screaming for this to come back in the future, simply because why would you? But even as far back as Splatoon 2, I've always had the distinct thought that you could potentially make a multiplayer Splatoon experience that doesn't require the usage of different cartridges. But a thought like that is but a pipe dream, much like the other things in Splatoon that I think most people wish, like apartments. I actually forgot about the apartments when Splatoon 3 came out, that's actually kind of sad. But regardless, this was the Battle Dojo, Splatoon's forgotten multiplayer mode that will probably never return in a future Splatoon game ever again. At least, for now anyways. And, you know what? I did mention that the Battle Dojo does have similarities to Mario Kart. I mean, tuna cans do act similarly to the items in Mario Kart, except for the fact they don't really give you status effects or overpowered items, unless you're playing Double Dash. But, and the simple fact that you're just using balloons as a means to gain points and lose points is kind of similar to the balloon battles in the battle mode. Kind of uncanny in the sense that the connections were kind of parallel to one another. But that's neither here nor there. That is simply all I wanted to discuss at the end of the day, just covering this obscure mode that not many Splatoon players tend to talk about these days. And I honestly wouldn't blame them. This was off to the side and it probably wasn't as marketed as much. It's there in the back of the cover of the box, but would you really be hard pressed to ever want to play this mode unless you have a sibling or some friends that are willing to play it? But in any regards, that is all I have to say about this forgotten mode from Splatoon. What are you guys' thoughts on the Battle Dojo? Do you have any memory experience from this mode? And if so, what did you think of it? Are you willing to see this mode return once again in the future, even though it probably might never will? Let me know down in the comments below. And I am pretty aware that this is yet another Splatoon video, and typically when I make these types of videos, they never always do well with my channel. But sometimes they might be surprises. Like that Sonic video. I didn't think that Sonic video would do especially well, but surprisingly enough, it did. And that caught me off guard especially, so to all of you guys that have watched that video, thank you. But in anyways, I still have some Splatoon content in the near future, but you guys aren't really as interested in Splatoon as I am, so I'll probably keep these uploads to a minimum at most, unless you guys really want to see me talk about more of Splatoon. I'm not really like most other Splatubers, I'm not that super into the game's knowledge, I only know a couple of things. It's not as extensive as Mario Kart or Smash Bros, but I still have a need to talk about Splatoon from time to time, so I'm fine with that. But anyways, that's all I have to say for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and just remember that Stu cares about you. Or, I guess in this case, Harmony, I guess.